I'm Caleb from Timpson Training, and on this episode of Why Not Just a Tip, we're going to talk about the goals of grounding and bonding. And you can see that up here, and we're also going to talk about the 5 to stay alive. Now, oftentimes when I do a grounding and bonding class, I'll ask the guys, what are the goals of grounding? And more than not, the answer I get is to protect us, to make everything at the same potential. And that's if I ask what the goals of grounding are. But the goals of grounding are simply this. They're not to protect you. They're not to keep you alive. The goals of grounding are to make the breaker or fuse operate in as few cycles as possible. So in other words, make that breaker open immediately. On the other side of that, the goals of bonding are to make everything at close to the same potential. So where I'm standing and what I'm touching, or what I'm touching over here and what I'm touching over here, that is to keep us safe. So it'll stop the voltage drop across our body from exceeding 50 volts, hopefully. So a good example of bonding would be a jumper across an open neutral. That is a bond, believe it or not. If I'm going to touch this side and that side, even if I have my gloves on, remember, our gloves and sleeves, our PPE, are always going to be our last line of defense. So, our first line of defense in that situation, if we cannot fully eliminate the hazard, is to bond, put a jumper across that open point. Just like being on a wood pole, you erect a potential ring as close to your feet as possible, and not just a jumper from the ring to the neutral with a ground 300 feet away. That's ridiculous. You're putting yourself in series with the ground. But the jumper from the bracket to the neutral and the bracket to the phase. Now, another thing I get asked all the time is, does it matter if I'm on the line or load side of the ground? And I've actually heard guys in speeches say, no, it doesn't matter because electricity travels at such and such speed. It does matter. It matters a lot. And in fact, if anybody's still listening to this and you want to go a little bit further into depth, you want to see some visuals, if I get enough comments that I want to see some visuals, on the next one I will actually bring the dirt box in, set it up, and pump real voltages into real wires, and we will put some light bulbs with some grounds, and you can see the wires heat up and start turning white hot, and we'll see if we can still get those lights to come on with just a ground and absent of a bond. And then we'll put the light bulb on the line and load side. But it does matter. You want to be on the load side of your ground and as close to the ground as you can possibly get. That is your why not. You don't want to use a ground as a means to protect your life. A ground is there as a means to make that breaker operate. The bond is to protect your life. The 5 to stay alive: identify, isolate, test, bond, and ground. Whenever we have a fatality in the grounding area, somebody gets killed while grounding, a fire starts, somebody gets a serious injury, it's always because we failed to do one or more of those things. And I'll give you a perfect example. Maybe we identified the circuit that we're going to work on. We tested it to be absent of voltage. We bonded and grounded, but we didn't fully isolate. And what do I mean by that? Then maybe we have both of our open points fully isolated and identified perfectly, tagged out. But what if we have a couple of transformers on that circuit and we failed to open the cutouts or remove the secondary legs and plug them together or pull the meters at the houses? That is a source of backfeed. If somebody improperly hooks a generator up, that's a source of backfeed. And that source of backfeed at several hundred feet from our ground can be a problem. And that can cause a fatality or a serious injury. So when we talk about isolate, we isolate all sources of backfeed, not just the ones that are most dangerous, all of them. I might get a guy that says, hey man, well what if I'm taking out 4 miles of wire and I have 300 transformers in there? Well, I would recommend you don't take out 4 miles of wire. If your job is here, you reduce the size of your zone so your isolation points are from here to here so you can see them, so it's more reasonable, so you can isolate everything, because nobody cares more about your safety than you do. Remember that. Nobody's going to jump out of a truck and try to save you if you're in the middle of making a bonehead move. So protect yourself. And that's it for Why Nots and Just the Tips for today. Thanks.